This conference will now be recorded.
And, Mr. Measy,
Yes, present.
Mr. Geppert,
Present.
Mr. DePonte,
Here.
yeah, Mr. Grega,
Here.
Ms. Phillips,
Here.
Mr. Schofield,
Here.
Mr. Sikorsky.
Present.
I see him here. Okay. Okay, we have all committee members are in attendance, and I also see Scott Charnot is here.
Can you perhaps get the agenda up on the screen, Chris?
Where are you pulling it from?
Thank you. Okay. Here we go.
So you just can click to open. You drag them over.
Can you go just further?
I can be in here, but see that tab up there?
Yeah.
These are the tabs that,
Oh, okay, I've got it. All right.
so that's your agenda item.
Okay.
Can we get the, I'm only seeing the upper half.
If we get everything, it will be,
There we go. Thank you. Okay. Next item is to approve the April 23rd meeting minutes. And the April 30 budget work. Let's start with the April 23rd meeting minutes. Are there any changes, suggestions, alterations to the April 23rd meeting minutes?
I would like to see if my changes by what that I sent via emails can be included.
John sent emails about his comments concerning the safety of the of what was proposed. If I'm characterizing this correctly, John, for the crossing of or for the between IBIS 8 and 9 where the golf carts go. John proposed adding some verbiage there, which had to do with safety of that. Does anybody object to adding that verbiage?
No.
Okay.
This is Ron, Bill. I have absolutely no problem with agreeing with John's additions. I would request that you add just one additional sentence at the end of his comment, indicating that I've got it written down here, so I could always send this to somebody if necessary. Mr. DePonte provided some counter arguments to Mr. Grega's comments.
Okay.
Is that okay?
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yep.
the whole point in not putting that in is that Mr. Grega said this, Mr. DePonte said this. That's not the way minutes are supposed to go. Whatever opinions you have should not go in the minutes. What should happen in the minutes are actions that the body took or reports that are made, such as the ponds report or the safety and security report.
Okay.
Teresa, how about the statistical data that John collected? That's an engineering report. Can that be included?
Absolutely.
That's not an opinion. That's a report with statistics.
Yeah, that can be added, and it should be added if we're basing our opinions on that report.
Yeah, okay.
John, would you be satisfied with just adding that factual information?
I have no problem. I'm a little concerned about the fact that, Teresa, is there a reason that we want to start changing how PPAC has been working? I understand like PPCA does very little detail on discussion, etc. We've been very transparent over the years. If you and the other people on the committee want to start changing part of that, I object to it. I mean, I think how does transparency of different facts that may relate to discussions hurt? I ran a business for 30 years and dealing with engineering firms, dealing with specifications, and was always transparent. And was very fortunate, never had a lawsuit.
Well, okay, my answer's twofold here. Number one, when I was asked to take the minutes, I was also asked to try to condense them because minutes aren't supposed to be a verbatim report of what occurred in the meeting. And my second answer is, as far as the legality is concerned, what happens in the minutes does not have any basis whatsoever in a legal action. If we had said that we think it's safe or we don't think it's safe, that's not what's going to be factual in a legal action. It's going to be the report itself, the actual facts that we based our opinions on.
John, if I can offer a comment from a historical perspective, you're absolutely correct. At one time, there was an attempt to do a verbatim. It took us so long to approve these, and I'm going way back in our lifespan, that we finally just got to the more traditional type of summary of the relevant decisions that were made. But the one item I'd like to point out to is our meetings are recorded. So if anybody ever wants to go back to hear the discussions, it's there. And
my point is, a summary is fine. I mean, if people want to, but to leave out why sometimes decisions are made, hey, if our committee is going to start really changing, which Teresa, I understand that some committees do that.
Yeah. John, I encourage Teresa to shorten the minutes because the minutes they developed from what Bob talked about as being an attempt at verbatim to a hodgepodge of some verbatim, some not verbatim. Reviewing them and ensuring the accuracy of them was very difficult. I used to spend hours on some of these minutes, and I concur with Teresa's comment that I think we should make them straight, limited, so that we don't spend a lot of time worrying about the puts and takes in the minutes.
John, the important part is the fact that a conversation took place is recorded in our minutes, and anybody who wants to get in the nitty gritty can listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Any further?
I would tend to think that, verbatim is not called for, but I think if somebody, John, in this case, gets some factual engineering data, that should be a permanent record, because that's not a personal input. That's just factual stuff. And down the pike, sometimes some of this information is really useful when you have to go revisit an issue. And when you have very, very limited, you have no basis to know where you came from, why you did something to help you go where you want to be going in the future. So I agree they should be brief, but I think that if anybody puts some technical information or factual information that becomes part of our meeting, that should be noted and maybe an addendum added. If the person that presents that factual data prepares it to be attached, Teresa doesn't have to do it. and it's just simply an engineering report or a legal report, a report from the city, something like that. I think some of
I
that.
think we already agreed to that, Joe. I think we all said that. I think we already said that. That's
Okay,
acceptable.
I guess I'm just rephrasing it in my terms for me to
Okay.
understand.
Okay. What I'm hearing, the consensus is that we enter the minutes with John's factual information, engineering information, John, and we'll ask you to put that together, those pieces that you want added that are factual information. And I would entertain a motion that we accept the minutes with the discussed additions.
I so moved.
Okay, we'll have a motion. Second?
I second.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. I think we're all opposed. Okay, we're in favor, so we can go forward with that. Let's get to the April 30th budget workshop minutes. Any changes, additions, alterations to those? If not, I take a motion to accept them as written.
Why did it come like, what's the deal with the printing there? Is that the way it came up at the CDD? Or did all of you get?
That's the formatting from Infomark back to.
Oh, okay.
The set I got certainly didn't have that funny printing.
Yeah.
No, I have a printed copy and mine's perfect.
Okay.
That might be a conversion issue from Word to.
Yeah. Okay, do I have a motion to accept the minutes as supposed to be printed?
I so moved.
You can open up for comment.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Joe, you seconded?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. All in favor?
Can I offer a comment, please, first for discussion?
Yes, I'm sorry.
If you look at the line that's showing up now with a list of 4 categories of reserves, it says marketing reserve. I don't think that's correct,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That's capital pond, I understand. I think that was supposed to be emergency reserve, I believe.
I think that's right.
I think you're right, Ron. Emergency reserve, we want to change that to emergency reserve. Okay.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay.
Good catch.
Okay, we have a motion, amended motion to accept the minutes of the meeting as written with the exchange, with the change suggested by Mr. DePonte. Any other changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. You can do it this way, Chris, because any opposed? Okay. Let's move on. Someone take this to the meeting. Let's move on to financial report. Glenn?
Good afternoon. I did not receive the May financial statement, so I did not send that out. We'll have to look at that next meeting. I requested on May 15th from Steve Bloom, the Gateway financial statement for the period ended March 31st, 20. I have not received that, so I cannot provide that to you. And therefore, there's no financial report as at this date.
Okay. Would ask Glenn that you tap into Stephen again and see whether we need to start getting our financial reports. Chris?
I agree.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to at times communicate very quickly.
Okay.
And
Chris, if
that-
you could help out, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, I'll check into that too. You said the last one you requested was the March 30th?
March 31st, 20. Yes, I requested that.
Okay.
And I'm only going to be interested for our committee, the Pelican Preserve portion, but it's a big financial, but I don't know the status of it, but I'll follow up with another email after this meeting.
Glenn, it seems to me, does that include what we call the HOA agreement part, the part that you and Scott work on?
Scott, you send that to me.
Yeah. And
I did send that to you, Glenn.
When did you send it?
Well,
Today?
no.
we certainly should be able to at least look at that, Glenn, get an updated version of that.
Okay. I'll double check my emails, but I did not believe that I received that from you, Scott, but I'll look again. If not, I'll let you know.
That one we should be able to get every month. I recognize that what you're getting from Stephen, the thing that's of greatest interest to us are the numbers that Scott compiles. So I think that's what you ought to focus on for the financial review.
Okay, very good.
Reserve review, any discussions on that? I think we made decisions on that, I guess, in the budget meeting.
Could we make sure, I'm a little confused. Have we decided to, the $93,000 that we were going to add to the budget to cover Castle's bill, we were gonna counterbalance that with a movement from the unassigned to take care of that? Is that agreed and we're gonna do that?
Well, Ron, I think there's a bigger discussion, not only that down, we get to the budget, I think we ought to discuss.
Okay, I'll wait.
We may want to transfer even more than that.
Okay. Oh.
Okay. Anything else on the reserves? Okay, for the budget. There's some twists and turns in the budget this year, and Chris has already gotten up there. Chris, if you can go to page 12. This is smarter. Page 12 of the budget. I don't know what that is. This is the reason I sent this to you and asked Chris to bring it up, is just to remind you again where we are. We have the HOA agreement, which is what we were just discussing. And the miscellaneous collection fees, which are minimal. We got in at the reserve, and also the budget, the ponds, the waterway management services, which you can see right up at the top there at 774,400. And then I had laid out for you previously that we also have what in effect are overhead costs that we get from the CDD. And all of these in total come out to $2,041,416. That's the number we're currently working with. That's our not to exceed number. So keep that in mind. But the critical issue really is, Bob, the we're not going to change the overhead numbers. The ponds number is set.
Yes,
The one we have to work with is the HOA agreement number. And just to kind of fill you in on that, what has occurred is we really want to look at how much each EAU is going to cost each EAU for the budget year. And we have an unusual situation occurring here because it looks like the assessment methodology may change, and that will make a difference as far as what each EAU will receive. So Chris, if you could go back to, I think it's about page 5 in this same exhibit. Not quite. Yep, keep going. No, no, back to the assessment area, which I think is the first exhibits. Yeah, a little further back than that. The next one up. Okay, right there. That's the one. If we were going to stay with the same assessment methodology we had this year, in the past year, the EAU, the per EAU charges would be what you see there. That is $1,132 for really what are single family and multifamily homes, smaller single family and multifamily homes, $1,219 for the single family homes. And this is in phase 1. So that's old Pelican. And if you look at phase 2 and 3, theirs is $961.64. They do not have the debt service fee. Phase 1 where the old Pelican has. And note, please, that debt service fee is different from one category to the next as far as the phase 1 is concerned. So that's what our per EAU assessments would be if the new assessment methodology is not accepted. And it's still hanging out there as to whether it will be accepted, but this is where we would be. We would have increases on the order of 5 or 6% per EAU to all of the residences in Pelican Reserve. If you then turn to Chris, I don't know that you can find it. There's another exhibit, and it has to do with new methodology. It's not in this package. It's in the next package. This one doesn't show it. Yeah. Okay. Going. Keep going. Yep, keep going. Okay, that's it. New methodology. You'll stop right there. You'll notice that in the new methodology, they differentiate between multifamily homes and single family. The multifamily homes are lower assessments and indeed are less than they would have had with the old methodology. The single family homes are more than they would be with the old methodology. So that is where we're going to be if the new methodology is accepted. Now, what I tried to do is the last exhibit that I sent you, which I prepared, and it's a single pager, Chris. if we can find it someplace.
Sorry. What was that you were looking for?
It says increases in residential per EAU assessments. It's not part of this, part of this. No, this is this is different, separate. It's a.
You
it's-
sent it in a separate email, so it wouldn't, I don't see it on the tabs at the top.
It was the last email I sent, which was frankly this morning.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I saw that on the email. I do not have that on the chart. I don't think that Julie had it.
Oh, so it's not available?
I'd have to go scan it and pull it on here. It'd take me about 5 minutes total.
Did everybody get that last one? It was a single pager.
Yes,
I've got it and I'm looking at it.
me too.
Yes, I received it.
Okay. Well, I don't think the exact numbers are that critical, except to note that we will now have, you'll notice in the chart we pulled up before for Old Pelican, there are only two categories of homes. There were the multifamily and the small single family. And those homes paid the same operating fee as the other homes, except they had a smaller capital expenditure. And so now we've got three categories, and people probably have questions about this. We have multifamily, we have the small single family homes, which get the smaller service fee. And then we have large single family homes, which get a larger debt service fee. And according to my calculations, multifamily fees, if the new methodology is accepted, the multifamily fees will go up less than 1%, just 0.4%. Small single family, again, in Old Pelican will go up 9.1%. Large single family will go up 8.4%. And that includes the debt service fee. In the residential part in Cypress Grove, which are phases 2 and 3, the multifamily will go up 0.5% and the single family will go up 10.1%. That is if we do nothing to reduce our current budget. Now, I'm sure people must have questions of me about how this all works, and I'm open to those questions.
This is Ron, Phil. I guess what you're getting to is you want to consider moving some additional monies out of the unassigned so that we can lower the total amount of money to be raised by taxes next year. Is that what you're suggesting or thinking about?
Well, I'm not
Bring those
suggesting that.
percentages down?
Yeah, that's the only way we can get these percentages down.
Okay, so
I'm trying to show you.
What are you thinking? How much money are you thinking about moving from the unassigned that makes this reasonable?
Well, it seems to me that before we do that, we ought to look at the HOA budget. And that we should have a chart for. That's one that I sent. And it's one that we discussed the last time we discussed the budget. It's got all the line items. And I don't know, can we find that one, Chris? That one you should, I would think should have, because I sent that quite some time ago. It's the one that Scott provided.
Well, Phil, if I might just throw out a comment.
Yeah.
it's not a done deal that we're doing the new assessment methodology.
I understand that, Bob, but it seems to me that it doesn't make any difference. One way or another, we probably want to chop the budget.
Well, I don't have a problem with that part, but if we don't go to the new methodology, is reducing the budget needed?
Well, unless you want to have 9 and 10% increases to single-family homeowners.
Well, if we stay with the existing methodology, will we still experience that? Is that what you're saying?
No, if you stay with the existing methodology, the increases would be 5 or 6% rather than
Okay.
9 or 10%. But either way, it seems to me we probably want to try and cut the expenses.
Well, I have no problem with that at all. I've no issue with that.
Yeah.
But I'm just
So-
saying it's not a done deal. The methodology is going to go.
Right.
That doubles our increase. Maybe we shouldn't be supporting it.
Well,
To
I
neutral.
understand that. I mean, it doesn't double the increase. What it does is it puts a higher burden on single-family homeowners and a lower burden on multifamily homeowners.
Okay.
But in total, it's the same.
Okay.
Does not change the total. It just shifts it from.
Okay. And maybe we're not, willing to accept that.
Well, that's true. Yeah. But
What I look at, Mr. Chairman Glenn here, when I was working on a fellow's tax return in Pelican today and looking at his real estate bill, and there's roughly 18 lines on that bill for ad valorem and non-ad valorem taxes. And one line it says is Gateway Services CDD, and it was $1,075.86. Now, if we were to increase that with the new methodology, I understood that the quarterlies in the master were going to come down, correct?
but not enough to completely offset that. Yes, the masters are going to come down enough to take about 3% off the total.
So then if we go 9, net 3, we're down to 6, which
That's right.
would we be. So, and I look at it too that we're transferring a tax situation. If you itemize your tax deductions, you end up getting a bigger tax write-off than you would pay in the quarterlies. So I see a benefit to move this from the master over to the Gateway CDD portion, even though it may show, and I don't think you're going to get much of a reaction anyways from the residents to the 20-line item on there.
But we've already made the decision that we are going to transfer that $90,000, $93,000.
Yes.
So yes, and it is tax advantageous to people who itemize.
And secondly, it's not going to be a true 9% increase
That's correct.
because of the offset of the master.
That's right. That is correct. It'll be down around for the single family homes, well, depending upon which methodology they approve. Now, we could leave this discussion. We would still have the opportunity to change the numbers one more time after our July meeting. Even told me that we have until the 29th of July to change the numbers. So and by the time of our next meeting, they will have made the decision as to whether the new assessment methodology is going to be used or not. But it still seems to me that if we want to do some cutting or we want to use some of the reserve to reduce the amount that we're increasing this year, that's a discussion we could still have without knowing precisely how it's going to impact the per EAU charge. it would reduce it either way, whether a new methodology or old methodology. So my suggestion is that we look at the exhibit with all of the HOA charges on it. Chris, I don't know whether you can find that. That was a single pager as well, but it was sent in advance, and it's got about 33 lines on it or something like that.
I do not have that up here.
You don't have that.
It wasn't included in that budget document. I could go take a look for, I could take a look and see if I can get it up for you.
Yeah, it would be, that's the reason I sent it. I think it's important that we be able to look at it. We looked at it the last time.
Okay, and that was the page that showed all the assessments?
No, it didn't. What it shows is all the expenses.
Okay,
It's actually an unlabeled exhibit. It shows all of the expenses there are about, I don't know, 33 lines or something of expenses. And it shows all the expenses for the HOA portion of the budget.
We had it at our May meeting. Do you have those documents still?
Hmm?
And then we had it up at the May meeting.
That's correct. We had it up at the May meeting. I do not, I don't have it here. Chris, well.
no, let me, hold on just a minute.
Hey, Phil, this is Ron.
Yeah, Ron.
While Chris is trying to look for it, I've got it on my smartphone, so I'm looking at the document that you're referring to.
Right.
And surprise, surprise to no one, I believe, the two major cost increases on the budget is the safety and security budget line that went from 30,000 to 70,000.
Right.
And the addition of the $93,411 to offset the Castle contract expense that the community association was originally paying for. If
Right.
you add those two increases, that's about $130,000 of the total budgetary increase between the rest of the budget and those two items. So that represents most of the increase from year to year.
Yeah, it was
So I
185.
don't know what other items you would like to talk about. Maybe there are some others you would like to talk about. But it seems to me those are the two biggies that we probably can just deal with one way or another.
Is that the exhibit you're looking for, Mr. Measy?
That's the exhibit. You got it. Thank you, sir.
Yay.
Keep making it bigger, Chris, if you can.
Sir?
You can't make it any bigger.
Oh, sure.
Your Zoom is right there.
You should be able to do it on your screen,
Oh, we can't do individually?
That's
on
good.
our own screen, yeah. Over at the right, it allows you to zoom in.
Sure does, okay.
Yep. Okay, everybody got that?
Yep.
Yeah.
In the process of doing this, the last time Bob and Scott, you were discussing whether there was some of this stuff that does not belong in this budget, but belongs in the ponds budget.
That is correct.
Did you resolve that?
We're getting there. We've identified a number of, as a matter of fact, I picked up the copy of it this morning of all the invoices that were improperly charged to Castle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working with Julie over at the district to get them properly assigned to the district. So right now it's not totally done, but it'll be done by August.
Mm-hmm.
But interestingly enough, and I must have, I don't know, 30 or 40 bills, and every one of those are invoices from FD&L. And every one of those invoices has utility taxes and sales taxes that were charged to the state of Florida that we will be exempt from when it goes to the district. So it's going to end up, just this exercise alone, aside from trying to get all the beans in the right columns, it's going to save us some real money.
Good. Scott, the question is, were those costs, are they in this budget that we're looking at?
Yes, they're currently still in the budget because we have not walked through the total cost yet.
So they're in the castle budget,
Yes,
and I have them accounted for in the ponds budget.
You have them accounted for.
Yes, I do.
So we should be able to reduce, the HOA budget by
Not some
the,
number, but we won't know probably till August. But yes,
do we have even an estimate of that, what that would be?
I do not, Phil. I can probably get it to you by the end of the week.
That would be insufficient time to still make the change at our July meeting. So we should try and get an estimate of that. Seems to me we should make that change, at least make that reduction.
I'm gonna guess it'll be about 10,000.
Okay.
That's just a swag
How
right
far-
now. Look at the bills.
Bob, how far back does that go?
I don't know what the question is. What do you mean? How long has it been in error?
Yeah,
Probably been in error since, I don't know, since they first started getting bills, 8, 9 years ago.
It's just been in the wrong pocket. It would still be in our budget, Glenn. If it weren't charged to the HOA, it would have been charged to the ponds. So in terms of the total budget, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, that's right. It's one pocket left, but we just recently discovered that Castle was paying those bills. They never should have been, but whatever reason they were.
that's no in regards to the sales tax. That would have to be a claim back to the state of Florida.
And we can certainly pursue that. I'm not quite sure how far you can go back on that, but yeah, it could be done. You're right.
Well, I'd like to, as a side note, take that on because we would have to put that claim together and go back more than 1 year to get that money. Because you're saying that that's exempt if it's in the ponds group.
That is correct. If it's paid by the CDD, look, we call it the ponds group, but if it's a bill paid by the CDD, they don't have to pay the sales and some of those other taxes. And I don't, Glenn, they have like 5 categories of tax on the bill that Castle pays. And I'm not exactly sure yet how many we don't have to pay. We may not have to pay any of them, unless Chris knows off the top of his head. Because we got a gross receipt tax, we got a franchise charge, a utility tax, Florida sales tax, and a discretionary sales surtax. So I know we don't have to pay the Florida sales tax for sure. How many of the other ones, I don't know yet.
Yeah, it would likely be all the other ones except for the sales tax and possibly the discretionary sales tax.
Yeah, I haven't compared the Castle bills yet to the CDD bills. We've got them, but I just picked these up this morning from Castle, about an hour before the meeting.
Should we?
We'll compare that to the CDD bills and see, what our savings opportunity is.
Yep.
Okay, but I won't carry this on, but reach out to me. I can help.
I will. If
Yes,
you want that, you got it. I'll give you the bullets.
I was going to say that I think we need an assignment for Bob and Glenn to get a hold of this and see what can be done, get those refunds back. That doesn't directly impact the budget at this point, except for Scott's estimate of how much we double counted between the ponds budget and the HOA budget.
That's the one step we've taken to move this forward, Glenn, is that Julie is going to be spearheading the changing of the billing structure from FPL to them. She's taking that on. Castle doesn't have to do anything. That part of it's internal, which is, half the battle. Somebody to go and change it all.
Are there any other of these lines of expense that we think we could reduce?
Well, the one question I had, I believe in the current year, we have 30,000 for safety. And are we taking that to 70,000 next year? And is that an ongoing 70 a year or?
It was, this is Ron, that was based on a list of about 8 or 9 specific projects we wanted to pursue for next year. Obviously, that changes year by year. It's certainly not a constant number year to year.
Okay.
So that's on
It's
specific.
just a question.
Ron, some of the items that were in that number, we are going to spend this year. Is that right?
Well, it's kind of a wash because, again, part of my discussion later on, if we decide not to do anything with the golf cart crossings, I'm recommending we take the pedestrian crosswalk project and move that into this year. That's kind of a wash when it comes to dollars. Mm-hmm. I would hold off on reducing that until we get to talk about the information that I provided you guys, I guess it should have been yesterday, concerning what Lennar wants to do with the existing crosswalk. And then we can decide if we want to reduce that 70,000. It would only be by $3,000, maybe $4,000 reduction. If we do nothing with the Azora crossing, the golf cart crossing across Cypress Grove.
Okay.
So, we could do that, but you might want to hold off until we have that other discussion.
I should note, by the way, in passing here, that this particular exhibit was before we added the $93,411.
Correct.
Yeah.
It should come to $1,520,585, but that's okay. Are there any other areas that we saw that we thought we could reduce the costs? That's what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, not hearing any. Now it seems to me we want to talk about, do we want to make a reduction by digging into our reserves in order to cut the increase?
Well, this is Ron again. I think the answer is yes. It's a question of how much. We had discussed offsetting the $93,000 increase due to the Castle contract by taking that 93 out of the unassigned account. You obviously can take more. I think the last number was between $800,000 and $900,000 sitting in that account. So obviously there is money there that could be used.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me that from a mechanical point of view, the best way to do that would be to reduce the amount. Remember, we have $365,000 that we are currently in the budget assigned to the capital reserve, to increasing the capital reserve. We could just take the money out and just reduce that number. Excuse me.
Sure, that would definitely work. So that would reduce that number to 300, and if we take the $93,000 out, yes, that reduces the amount to about 260.
Well, we could make it 265, make it an even number.
Yeah, that's fine with me. See what everybody.
I have a question about the 93,000. If that's going to be reduced out of our master board dues, we're just taking from Peter and having Paul pay it. It's the same amount of money. People in the community aren't going to save a dime. Why would we be going into reserves to pay it?
Because nobody saves anything unless you move the money out of the reserves to pay for that.
We're going to get that money reduced from our master board, as I recall.
That's correct. But in that
So I'm
discussion,
I'm breaking even if that's the case.
that's correct. And that's up to the board, what you guys want to do. In that discussion we had, I supported moving that bill to our budget, provided at least in part that we could offset that from our unassigned dollars. Again, we've got $800,000 to $900,000 sitting there. It's not collecting a whole lot of interest, and it just sits there. I'm not sure what else we would do with that money.
I agree with Ron.
I understood from Mr. Robner, we were going to get that taken out of the budget. Therefore, we were just taking it from one place to another place, and it's a break even. Am I wrong?
No, you're right about the 93,000, Joe. But what Ron is proposing is that we just reduce our costs by 93 or $100,000 just to keep a lid on the increase for this year, because the increases are pretty
I don't have
substantial.
a problem keeping a lid on the increase. What I'm really concerned about is the transparency, that people understand the bill should be this. We're going to take money out of the reserves and cover it this year. But next year, you're going to have to pay it.
That's correct.
Yeah, I agree with that, Joe. You're right. Let's take our current operating funds and handle them that way, and our reserves handling something else. Like if we took the reserves to pay for some of the safety work group things that we know we want to do, they're not recurring every year. That would be appropriate. If we take the reserves to pay for the boardwalk replacement, which is a once in a 20-year, then that's a good spending of it.
I just think we're playing, I hate to use the term a shell game, but that's what it seems like to me. We're going to give you a break this year on your bill, but we're going to be paying it in the future anyhow.
Let me just add in that part of that whole discussion included a review of all of the budget items that were originally part of the community association budget that would transfer to the CDD because of the bankruptcy of WCI. And that's supposed to occur this year. That review, that was part of the agreement we've got with the community association. So
Say what?
comment would be correct if we decide to leave all these budget items here. I suspect we won't do that. I don't know for sure, but I would suspect that several of these items are going to be transferred back to the community association for next year's budget.
Well, that's news to me. When was that decided?
Yeah.
We had that discussion at the last meeting, Bob.
Am I the only one that missed it?
Yes, no.
I'm
not really clear on this whole thing. I voted against it. I just didn't agree with that for a lot of reasons, and this is part of it. I just think we're doing something that's just, to me, it wasn't. Well, I don't want to get into it, but you're saying we're not going to be paying this bill next year? We're just paying it this year?
I'm saying that the entire budget is supposed to be reviewed line by line and a decision reached between us and the community association, which budget items should go back to them based on what they used to fund when WCI was running things before the bankruptcy. So I can't tell you what we're going to pay for next year until that's completed.
Well, that's the thing that's news to me, Ron. I've never heard that before.
Well, Bob, it definitely was discussed at last month's meeting. I know, I made a point of it.
I think I would like to submit, I think there was a misunderstanding here as to what was agreed to, and that is that we would review all the expenses and see what made sense in terms of where they should sit, whether they should sit with the community association or sit with us.
Right.
And Philip Rovner agreed to that. There would be such a review. But the fact of the matter is that's not going to change this year's numbers in any way, or next year's numbers, if you will, the fiscal year 2021 numbers. We're not going to be changed in any way through that review. And
is that documented in our minutes? I hate to bring that up, but I mean, that was Is that documented?
We haven't seen those minutes yet, Joe.
The May minutes have not been
Oh, that's right.
drafted yet, so we have not seen them yet. Yeah. Well, part of the problem is, of course, is that those minutes, because of the way we conduct these meetings, we go round and around. There's lots of conversation. People say lots of things, and it's hard for the minute taker to get it all.
Are you
So
kidding?
it's not always clear. I think, Ron, the problem is that if we take out of reserves to cover that amount, then we're stuck next year with effectively having to either take more out of the reserves or have an increase next year. Now, it could be that in the next year we could find a way to offset that, but we are now going to be taking those costs from the community association, or the $93,000 or its equivalent in fiscal year 2022 will still be in our budget.
Am I the only one that looks at dollar amounts instead of the percentage increase?
No.
Because as a single family homeowner, I would not be surprised if my taxes were raised $56 a year.
Where do you get the $56? Teresa, that was the old methodology, is that right?
Right. And under the new methodology, if I'm looking, new methodology, it'd be $100.
That's right.
97.52.
That's correct. That is correct. Yep.
But there's people that are going to look at that percentage, and that's 10%.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think we have a rationale for it, but how convincing that would be, I mean, in other words, the explanation is that a big chunk of it is we've taken on expenses that are going to be offset at the community association level. So that's part of it. Second part is that if these numbers are if they use the new assessment methodology, that's what's causing another chunk of it to happen. So the actual increase, other than those two things, is more in the 2 or 3% range. I think, and we've tried to do this in the past, have not always done it every year, we've usually sent out a letter to explain the increases in our budget. And in fact, as part of our discussion with Philip Rovner, he had suggested that we send out a joint letter because there is going to be a certain amount that's going to be offset from one budget to the other, and that needs to be explained as well. So the question is, do we feel we can live with raising everybody's, expenses by 5 or 6% under the old methodology, or 9 or 8 or 9 or 10% over the new methodology, or do we want to do something to offset that? Right now, it doesn't look like we have any substantial expenses that we feel we can actually cut out of the budget, with the exception of this on the order of $8,000 or $10,000 where we double counted. I haven't heard any others where we think we can make a cut. We could certainly, I think we could go after some of the safety and security work group money, take another 10,000 there, but that's not a big difference.
I don't think I'm in favor of taking reserve money for a bill we're paying the Castle Group for their expertise.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure you should look at it that way. I think you should look at it as just we're taking an opportunity to use the reserve to cut our expenses and in effect returning to the taxpayers, the Pelican Reserve taxpayers, money that we took from them over the years that we've got in reserve. Because that reserve was built up because in effect we overbilled in past years. That's how we built that reserve up.
Joe is correct.
If we make it perfectly clear to the residents, that's fine. Your tax bill will go up 10%, but we're going to use money we've collected over the time period to offset one bill and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
I just think it has to be very clearly stated.
Where do other people come out with regard to using the reserves?
I would rather not, but I understand the thought process and I'll go along with the group.
Mhm.
I agree with you,
If we have a
Phil.
recurring bill, let's just, bite the bullet and go forward with it.
Teresa, where do you come out?
Well, I kind of feel the same way Bob does. I mean, I'm not for it, but if that's what the group wants to do, I'll go along with groupthink. It looked to me like John was trying to say something and I didn't hear what he said.
Go ahead,
I
John.
just said I agree with Phil.
Okay.
Okay.
What was that? What do you mean you agree with Phil? Reserves or non-reserves?
With take it out of the reserves.
Okay.
I think Ron DePonte made a
Okay.
good
I
point.
just didn't understand. All right.
In the next coming years, we are going to probably be sending stuff to PPCA as opposed to having it in PPAC.
Well, I totally agree with that and I support it, but that's a TBD. We're trying to decide right now what we're going to do. And I personally feel we ought to be doing within the prism of PPAC. As we go back to the community association, that's a whole other discussion and we'll need to address that when we do it. But we're not the community association, we're PPAC.
Yep. And I also think that if we are to do this, if we're to go into reserves, that we will not express it as doing it because we got this extra expense. We're just doing it to return funds to people that we've collected over the years. Now, we do have this extra expense that we've agreed to take, but that's offset in their dues over on the community association side.
Well, and I don't want to muddy it, but are we going to be able to pay for the boardwalk in our current funding efforts?
Yeah, the boardwalk is going to be what, $1,100,000, and I believe we've got sufficient funds in there for that. Do we not, Glenn?
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we do. We've
Yeah,
got
that was voted on at last meeting.
right, and we still have funds beyond that, Bob.
Okay. Because that's going to take a big chunk of it. We've always had this little kitty, so to speak.
Yep.
But when we take it down $1 million, we're taking a lot of it. But okay. I'm okay with it.
I want 90,000.
Well,
I got to say, Mr. Chairman, that I was not thinking in favor of taking from the reserves because I always believed that you could never have enough reserves of what future situations or expenditures may be now that we're a built-out community. But you changed my mind when you made that point that we were overbuilding in the past.
mm-hmm.
And this is now using some of that reserves to get them more in line with what they should be and even going forward. So I'm in favor of that now.
I would entertain a motion to reduce the addition to the capital reserve from 365,000 to 265,000 in the budget that we will submit to the CDD as our final budget.
Bill, your second number wasn't clear.
200. I said 365,000 to 265,000, just $100,000. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
John Greger will make that motion.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second it, Glenn.
Okay, Glenn seconded it. Further discussion?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, and I apologize. Are we also going to move $100,000 from the unassigned reserve account into the capital reserve account?
We could certainly do that, but I think that's a separate discussion. That's a separate discussion.
Okay.
All right. Right now, we're looking at reducing the assigned dollars to the capital reserve by $100,000. Any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
And Mr. Measy, for clarification, you're moving that from reducing the assigned reserve account from $100,000 and moving that to where?
No, what we're doing, Chris, is we're taking the reserve capital program. If we look at our budget, where we have $365,000 assigned to the reserve capital program, we are reducing that number to $265,000.
Okay.
And that's on that page 12 of the original exhibit you put up there. Okay, so that passes 6-1. I don't know that we actually needed a motion on that. We just need to, so our budget will include that. Anything further on the budget per se?
Yeah, I have one question, Phil. When's that bill paid? Do we pay that in one lump sum yearly? Is that paid periodically? And when is it paid?
When you say the bill is paid,
The $93,411. How is that paid?
no, that will be paid periodically.
Okay. So when would it transfer from the PPCA to the PPAC?
We will start paying it at the beginning of our next fiscal year.
October 1st.
Okay.
Hey, Ron, I think we can continue the discussion if you want. Do you want to bring up, do you think we should, are you proposing that we should move $100,000 from the unassigned to the capital reserve?
Yes, I would. We've got the 800 or so $1,000 sitting there with no claimants against it. It's a relatively large number, and I don't see anything wrong with moving that to offset the reduction in the budgetary amount for the reserve. So I would suggest we move 100,000 of it into the capital reserve account. That still leaves $700,000 to $800,000 in that unassigned account.
Mm-hmm. Further discussion on that?
Well, only to the extent that our capital reserve money, and when we started that, it was underfunded in the beginning. So, we don't have the real kitties that we think we have because our capital fund is not, it wasn't my area, but I remember the numbers. We were deficient in what we should have been putting in.
That's right.
Was that John Greger? Did you do that? Was that?
No, that was me, Ron.
Okay, Ron. So
Yeah.
where do we stand on that? I mean, how close are we to?
We're right where we're supposed to be.
We are now fully funded?
Now,
Great.
the exception to that is if you recall, the boardwalk replacement, that had not been added to the capital reserve. We started doing that with last year's budget. We were adding another $30,000 or $35,000 a year for that specific purpose. Okay. So once we take this $1 million out of there, and I think that's where it's coming from, we may be a little underfunded, it's possible. But we're pretty healthy in that account. I forget the exact dollar amount in there, but it's over $3 million, I think, in that neighborhood.
Okay, very good. Well, the only thought I have on that is when we eventually merge with PPCA, we will also be taking on the burden of the capital replacement of all the community assets. You know, and although we have those particulars that we've been stewarding in good shape, I'm not quite as sure that the community is in good a shape.
Well,
Just
the community has substantial reserves, Bob. Those were planned into the purchase of the town center.
well, yeah, and I remember that. I just didn't know whether they had done a real capital asset study like we did to see what they needed, or whether they're just spitballing and saying, you know, it's 5 million and that's great.
Mhm. The plan of the community association is to continue adding to those reserves, to do a capital study and add to those reserves.
No, I totally understand. I just wonder how far off they are. That's all.
Okay. Any other feeling about just moving $100,000 from the current unassigned reserves to capital reserves? Okay.
Nope.
Hearing nothing, we'll leave that one for now. Why don't you bring it back up?
Do we need a motion, Phil?
Well, I don't hear, if somebody wants to make a motion to do that, I will.
I'll make a motion to move $100,000 from the unassigned account to the capital reserve account,
Yep.
effective the beginning of the next budget year.
Mm-hmm.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? I think I'll go around and get everybody's vote in the order I see your picture. John? How do you
I
vote?
agree.
Glenn?
Aye, yes.
Joe?
Aye.
Bob?
Yeah, absolutely.
Teresa?
Yes,
Ron?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so it's unanimous. Okay, we will, Glenn, I think we probably ought to be official, notify Stephen about that. Okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion on the budget? There being none, Chris, can you put the agenda back on the board
Yes,
so I know where we are here? Okay. All right. Scott, you're on.
Okay, I see that Danielle is patiently waiting online, so I would like to at least give her the opportunity to make a report and bring us up to speed on the traffic counts and the hurricane plan, if that's okay with all of you.
Sure. Danielle, go ahead.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. You can hear me okay?
Mhm.
Yep.
yeah.
All right. Good deal. Good deal. So our traffic counts this month, a little bit higher than April. So things are slowly creeping back to normal. So in our guest entries, we had 7,048, and owner entries was 47,757. So a total of 54,805. Still very low, but going back in the higher direction. So so the other thing I had to talk about, I know that Phil, you should have received our updated plan for hurricane preparedness. So I'll be reviewing that this month, going over, the stock of supplies that we have and things like that, and just reviewing, since we have a pretty new team this year, making sure everybody's, on the same page with us, and we're ready in case we do have a bad season like they're expecting. So we'll prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. Does anyone have anything for me?
Danielle, the question I guess I would have is, in the event of a hurricane,
Mhm.
how are you going to work your personnel assignments as far as the gate is concerned?
Right. So Phil, that's a great question. We stay staffed, and we'll even stay, through the storm, if needed. But basically, our plan, if you, I don't know if you had a chance to review the preparedness plan, actually outlines kind of what happens, as what type of storm, the strength of the winds, things like that. So we'll stay and man the gate, as long as needed. And that's something that sometimes. Hold on, sorry, 1 second. Let me pull it up here. I'm trying to see if it has it outlined specifically, but I know that in our preparedness plan, I think it does state that. I want to make sure before I tell you that it does state that, but
Daniel,
a simple answer. Mm-hmm.
my suggestion is that, and I guess I didn't realize this, I think you ought to distribute a copy of that plan to all the members of the PPAC,
Okay, I can do that.
so people get an
Absolutely.
Didn't we
idea.
get one?
If I might,
I thought we got one.
everyone should have received one in the packet.
Okay. I thought we did, but that's what I was.
So if you all want to review that, and if there's any questions at all that come up, please feel free to shoot me an email. And if there's anything that I may have missed, I think it's all there. But if there's anything that you come up with that you might think needs to be added, I would be happy to review and add anything that is needed.
Danielle, this is Ron DePonte.
Hi, Ron.
Hi. It doesn't affect what would happen during this hurricane season, but would it be possible for you to do a little bit of an assessment as to the impact of not having a second exit from the community during a hurricane or right after a hurricane? Is that okay? Or I don't want to add any costs or whatever, but from your security perspective, does that make any sense to take a look at that?
It does, and we can look at that. I'm not sure, how much specific information we could give as far as, that would be like more specific probably to the association to determine, number of vehicles exiting a certain, there's some technical things that are involved, but I think we could probably do a general assessment of the community.
Yeah, just does it make sense to even think about the need to having an emergency exit in the back of the community? And for everybody else's benefit, I was going to bring this up during my portion of today's meetings, but I know, Daniel, you'll be leaving, so I just wanted to throw it out at you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I will definitely look into that and see what we can do.
Are there any other questions of Danielle? Danielle, thank you. Scott, you want to?
All right. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All righty. An update on our projects. As you're aware, the weather has put an impact on the completion of our painting. In addition, I did send to all of you, and I did forward this over to Phil, a change order within our painting project. What we have found is a tremendous amount of delamination of the stucco on all of the posts that are out front, the large columns that hold the trellis, and around the monuments. So we've exceeded the contractual amount of 20 square feet allotted for stucco repair. We're up to 227 square feet. So we had to do an additional change order in the amount of $3,726 to the current contract. It actually comes out to $18 a square foot as far as true cost to the association. Now, this was created because the top of those pillars were not sealed correctly. And that is why we've had a tremendous amount of not only delamination, but when we go in and repair the cracks, the stucco falls off the pillars. So what had to be done was major stucco repair prior to the painting. We have had an assessment done on the gatehouse and the other structure, and we're not finding the same condition with the other structures that are going to be painted. So this was part of the painting requirement that the manufacturer of the paint did require, so we have our 10-year warranty on the paint.
So we need, now I believe we decided that Chris could approve an addition of this amount. I don't think it has to go to the board, but we need to approve it. $3,726, Scott, was that
That is correct.
number? Questions of Scott? If not, I would entertain a motion to spend an extra not to exceed $3,800. A change order of $3,800 to the current painting contract. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll
A
make the
second?
motion.
Joe makes a
We,
motion. Second?
$3,800 to the expense
Yep.
cleaning that.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, go ahead, Scott.
All right, as far as the trellis replacement, that's going to be ongoing when we receive the shipment of the lumber. After inspection, it was not where we wanted the quality to be. There were some problems with the measurements and actually the quality of the lumber. So we are reordering that lumber. And in a way, it's a good thing because we can finish all our painting, but there will be a delay in getting that work completed. As far as the boardwalk does have to go through review and steps with the taxing authority, the GSCDD, because of the cost of the project. So there are several engineering steps and public postings that we will have to comply with to get the final approval from the Board of Supervisors. And that's the update I have.
Yeah, we should also mention that the other thing that needs to be done with regard to the boardwalk is we need to have an agreement with Sienna because we're going to be using some of their property as staging areas when the construction goes on. So we're working on drawing up an agreement with Sienna for that part of the project.
Scott, do you anticipate a delay in the start of the repair replacement work? I think you
on the boardwalk,
an early July start date. Is that in jeopardy?
Oh, definitely. The start date could be pushed back, but I'm still working on the timetable to get it completed on time.
Okay, does that impact the tentative agreement you've got with Sienna?
No.
Okay.
That will not affect the Sienna agreement. Basically, once we have everything put together on the project, the contractor who's doing the building would have to just exit that area by the agreed date.
Any further questions of Scott?
Scott, a question on the trellises where you talked about the quality of the wood and the length. Is that going to be that change without cost to us?
That is without cost to us.
Thank you.
Further questions of Scott? Okay. We have in here hurricane plan. I think people got copies of them. There is going to be probably a hurricane committee put together by the Community Association, community emergency response teams. We're currently working on, so you'll be hearing more about that in the next week or two. In fact, we've already are issuing communications about people's preparedness for hurricanes. So you'll be hearing more about that in the coming few weeks.
And who's heading that up, Phil?
We have not selected anybody yet, Bob, but we will.
Okay, because I'd like to make sure we get a chance to tell them some of the things, that happened the last time from those of us that were in the middle of it.
Yeah.
I'd like to add, if I could, we just got all the hurricane kit information from our insurer. We changed insurers last year, and a lot of the details Bob might make reference to is items people can and can't file for reimbursement when you want to pull things down, and some of the information you have to get reimbursement for those hurricane expenses. And I'd be glad to work with your committee and provide them all those documents. And at the same time, we've incorporated your hurricane plan into the back of our emergency plan, so we have all that contact information with the folks to work with over in Pelican.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to, Chris. The last time, for the committee's benefit, the last time we reacted to, at least I'm talking about Pelican, too quickly on some of our items before we understood the documentation that would be needed. And we repaired stuff that we could have legitimately received reimbursement for, but we reacted so quickly, we didn't conform to what was needed. So we certainly don't want to make that mistake again.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about fast action. Our local HOA board was required to sign a contract with Emerscape to guarantee quick and fast service for cleanup. Is PPAC required to have use Emerscape? And my concern is Pelican Preserve Boulevard with trees going down and not being able to exit because we only have one exit. Do we have to have a contract in advance with Emerscape to clean up trees that are downed?
That is already in place, Joe. That's done each year. The key is with landscape cleanup is only a very small portion of cleanup is covered by either insurance or by FEMA. So the key is to clean up the community immediately so owners and emergency vehicles and vendors have access to it. So this is an agreement as far as an hourly rate, and PPCA has one and PPAC has one. So all the areas of the community are covered.
That's good, because I don't ever recall seeing that officially noted. So I just wanted to make sure of that. Thank you.
Last comment on hurricane, since we're discussing that. The members that drive up tree line towards Colonial will notice all the white crushed stone behind the Winn-Dixie conveyance. That's our exit flow from Basin 6 going to Colonial and Pond 1. And the district just went through there and put in riprap. That's what that stone all is. And they're working this week, I believe they're working, I haven't seen them yet, to do the same thing behind what used to be the Goodwill Shopping Center. So if you see that kind of work, that work is being done as prep for hurricane water evacuation. We did the same thing with the flowway beyond tree line all the way out to the 6 Mile Slough. All the obstructions that we had from the last time, that slowed water leaving us have been cleaned and repaired.
Bob, are there any impact to that work that's been done by the planned construction of 180 townhomes in that area?
Totally separate thing, totally separate, unrelated, and we're working with Tetra Tech to negotiate on behalf of Pelican that the water that is generated from these new homes, we, Pelican, want the water to either go north to Winn-Dixie or west to Colonial. Lennar doesn't want to do that. Lennar wants to send it to the flowway. They must send some of it north. They must. But they're trying to get us to agree not to do that. We're not going to agree. So that's TBD and ongoing.
Protect our own rights here.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything further on that? Tom, we'll move right into your report.
Okay, a couple of follow-ups. First with aeration. The electrical repairs that we're waiting for Lennar to approve for the 5 or 6 ponds in Matarita, Prato, and Pistoia that they were negligent in their initial installation. We're getting closer. We're not there yet. It moves at a glacial pace, but they haven't rejected them yet. That's the good news. The repair of Pond 39 out at Palazzo is in that same bailiwick. They acknowledge it's theirs. They acknowledge they're responsible for it. And we just got to get them to sign the check. And that's kind of where we're at. All the engineering's been done. Permits are issued. It's just getting them to sign the check. We also have, and we approved it in the last meeting of PPAC, and it was finally approved by the CDD board at their last meeting to upgrade, I think it's about 6 or 7 ponds in Matarita and Prado and even a couple in Carena to our standard of aeration. So that work is now going to Solitude. And Chris, I think you forwarded them this week or something. So that will now be taking place. Unfortunately, the aeration in Pond 35, which is at Solaro, that's been down for over a year. And we still don't know when we're going to be able to get the equipment to fix that. It's been a very, very slow process, and the coronavirus hasn't helped the supply chain at all. So when I get an update, everybody will get it. But there's a lot of short tempers over that one, including ourselves. The biggest personal disappointment in that is that I thought we had a large enough store of replacement parts that we could handle something like this. But we didn't. We will correct that for the future. Moving on to downspouts, Pond 48.
Tom, can I interrupt for a minute about
Sure,
aerators?
Sure.
Are the do the aerators go every day?
They should be 24/7. Should be 24/7.
Okay. I drove, and I'm sorry I don't know the pond number, but the pond that is between the green on Heron 6 and the T on Heron 7, the aerators weren't running today.
Okay, we have, well, of course, our people look for them, the ponds group, but we get twice monthly inspections. And quite honestly, it's not unusual that they're not working. A gator will move them. There's a million reasons, but we do have twice monthly inspection. How critical is it that they'll be running constantly? Not very, but we want them to run, and we're going to keep them running. But it's mainly in the wintertime when the water gets colder at the upper levels where we get the most benefit, so that we don't freeze our fish and things at the bottom. But yeah, twice a month. If that's not enough, we might be weekly, but right now. And we just changed it within the last 60 days from a once-a-month inspection to twice monthly because we couldn't keep up.
Okay.
Downspouts in Carena. Well, as I said, he's at Pond 48 right now. We met out there this morning. I expect it'll be done in 2 weeks. He's usually pretty quick. He'll be moving from there into Matarita. Now, Matarita is going to be a tricky community for us because we commonly refer to Matarita as Matarita 1 and Matarita 2. But from the construction permit description of Matarita, there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And unfortunately, the homes in 2, 3, and 4, some of them required Lennar to put in downspouts, and some they don't. So we're going through literally home by home to see what Lennar should have done. Did they do it? And if they didn't, then that'll be the next big pursuit of refund that we go after Lennar. And I've already told them this, because we know they have homes out in Prado and Pistoia. Well, not Pistoia, out in Prado, where they did not adhere to the permit criteria manual, and we're going to back bill them for all of that. But Matarita is going to take us a while. The board approved all of our expenditures for that, as did PPAC last month. And I'll just remind you that that was like $500,000. We do not expect to spend that much, because for those homes that Lennar did put in the downspout and drainage, the only thing we will be doing is doing center yard drainage. And we've decided to take all the bubble up boxes. Right now they use 3 or 5 inches circular things, and they're terrible because they're already overgrown with grass. And we're going to put in the more standard grate that we've had out in the rest of Pelican, where they're 12-inch squared. And in addition to the 12-inch square, we're going to collar them with some level of concrete. We expect to have some proposals on what that will look like at the end of this month, and then we'll decide and move forward. We have seen some of them. They look very, very good when they're done right. The drainage that Lennar installed in both Matarita, Prado, and Pistoia is single wall piping, not our double wall. We decided not to change that. We're going to leave it like it is and just upgrade the bubble up boxes. And then when they fail in the future, if they fail, if they're crushed or they get clogged or whatever, then we will change them as required in a repair basis in the future. So they're not to the standard that the rest of the community is. But some of these things are only a year old. It just seems wasteful to just arbitrarily rip them all out and put them back in. So that's kind of where we are on that. And I don't know if there's any questions about that, but that's where the ponds group is. The FPL electrical, I mentioned that earlier. We do expect to have that completed by August, I'm hopeful. And I'll be able to tell you the cost at the next meeting, and I will work with Glenn on all that so we get our money back. One of the latest initiatives by our friends in the board of directors, and specifically Mr. Tinkle, is that they are trying, Gateway is now trying to change the way that they get reimbursed for the flowway. At the present time, the flowway does not come under the ponds work group, and we contribute nothing to the maintenance and or excavation or anything else on the flowway. So Mr. Tinkle is floating an idea among the other board members that the contributors to the flowway, those that are putting water in it, should be paying their fair share. That's on the face of it, it sounds reasonable. I'm not opposed to us paying our fair share. However, the way I perceive this, and I'm really looking for a consensus from PPAC, is that Pelican is a contributor. Botanica Lakes is a contributor. Worthington is a contributor. Colonial is a contributor. Arbor Woods is a contributor. And even Bridgetown. And I think that they have put some feelers out to some of these other communities. And Chris, if I don't state this right, feel free to correct me. But basically everybody else is saying, that's your cost. Don't ask us to help. That's was set up by South Florida Water Management initially 15 years ago, before all these other places were even built. So I don't know where that's going to be in the future, but I just wanted to make you aware of that that is something under consideration. So if Greater Gateway can get everybody to contribute, then I think we ought to pony up and pay our fair share. But I would not support that we're the only ones that help Gateway do it. And the last thing to keep in mind relative to flowway is not all of our community goes to the flowway. Maybe a little more than half. Everything in Basin 6 that heads up to Winn-Dixie is not a part of the flowway. So for them to ask us to pay 1/3 is way out of proportion to the amount I perceive that we might have some equity in. So that's all I have today. Oh, and one other thing that could do this later, but I am officially running for seat 2 on the CDD. I signed my paperwork, got a campaign treasurer, and just wanted you all to at least be aware of that. And that is the bonds report.
Any questions of Bob?
Where do we donate money?
We'll be telling you very shortly. The account will be set up at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So we can't take money today. That's illegal. But tomorrow we can.
Okay.
Thank
Bob, does anybody else from Pelican running on for any other seat?
Not that I'm aware of, and this is just me ad-libbing, but it would be kind of a sticky wicket if we, as a community, tried to seat more than a total of 2 seats on the board. Bill Guy is already there.
All right, so you're not
legitimately represent 40% of total Gateway. So we should, without any question, be entitled to 2 seats. Historically, we've had 2 seats. But I don't know of anybody else that's running at this time.
Okay, what I'm saying is Bill Guy's seat is still there. So
His is not up for re-election for 2 more years. They go in a cycle. All 5 are not up. This year, 3 seats are available. Margaret Feinberg, Ed Tinkle, and Kathleen Flaherty. And I'm running for Kathleen's seat.
Any further?
Just for you to know, Bob, I called your friend, your campaign manager back, and I haven't heard from him.
Doug? Okay, I'll get him. If he doesn't tighten up, I'll fire him.
Any further questions of Bob? Okay, let's move on to Ron. I think you're next up.
Thank you. I apologize for the late notice, but I sent, or through Julie anyway, I sent you a rather detailed update as to the latest information on the Cypress Grove crossing. I'm pretty sure Chris doesn't have that, so he can show it, but hopefully you've had at least an opportunity to look at it. Should be sitting in your email.
Yes, sir.
So basically what I gave you there was a copy of the email that I received from Ian Coleman, who's the golf club manager, that he and members of management in Lennar did their own review of the golf cart crossing, and they provided a whole list of recommendations to improve the safety of the existing crossing, disregarding either the Azure or the Solera options that I had tossed on the on their desk to take a look at. The email I sent you guys is kind of a summary of what they were suggesting. It's a whole host of things. Additional signage to get more carts to go to the existing crossing, the improved crossing, more signage at that crossing, mirrors at that crossing, rumble strips on Cypress Grove, and more flashing signs. These are the same signs that are already there, even though they're not really working that well. So if you looked at all of that, we gave a quick estimate that it's got to be within, if we did everything that they're suggesting, $15,000 to $20,000 to do all that. Most of the cost has to do with the flashing signs. They're quite expensive. I, in fact, had contacted a company, a Florida company that does provide those kinds of signs, and there's really a lot of options. They're in the process of sending me a preliminary back of the envelope kind of an estimate for some of these signs that they've got available. There are signs that alert drivers that there's a golf cart crossing. That's similar to the signs that are there now. There are other signs that only start to flash when there's a golf cart in the intersection. There are signs that will flash to tell the golf cart drivers that there are cars approaching. So there's all kinds of options when it comes to flashing signs, and the costs vary significantly. So without spending a whole lot of time, after we looked at that, the meeting I had last week with the SSWG members, what we're suggesting or recommending is we put the golf cart crossing project on hold. Not eliminate it, not delete it, but put it on hold. Give us time to look at all these possible options that Lennar put out there. And I need to obviously add that Lennar is not willing to pay one dime towards any of this, okay, including signs along their cart paths. They say it's not in their budget, and they're making the assumption that we, the CDD, will pay for all of this, which I thank them profusely for. So like I said, we're going to put that on. I think we're going to recommend you guys put that on hold and take it out of the existing task authorization that was given to Tetra Tech last week, the signed version of it. The one thing we're not going to take out, we want them to take a look at the permit requirements for the mirrors. The reason why I'd like to keep that in there is the mirror that we put on Venito, that did not require a permit from the city of Fort Myers. So we kind of know what that cost us, the one that we put there, obviously. But the one that we would, if we put mirrors on Cypress Grove, that would probably be more expensive at the very least because of permitting requirements. And I don't know if there's any other requirements that the city might have for putting a mirror in the right of way like that. So I wanted Tetra Tech to go research that as they're dealing with the city of Fort Monmouth on the other projects that are going to be permitted. The other thing is one of the projects we had scheduled for next year was to put in a pedestrian crossing at the end of Cypress Grove where it meets Pelican Reserve Boulevard. There's no crossing, pedestrian crossing there now. That was one of our items on our project list for next year. We think the cost of that would be about the same as the original Azure recommendation. So from a cost perspective, it'd be about a wash. So what we'd like to do is add that to the task authorization with Tetra Tech and proceed. So we still would have 4 projects, just that the mix is a little different. In discussions with Chris Shoemaker, all they would need to change that task authorization is a note from us telling them to do that. We don't need any approvals from the CDD proper to accomplish that. So I told them I was going to wait to see what you guys said. That kind of summarizes that portion of it. Any comments or discussion on that?
Ron, just one.
Yeah.
Did you say you sent out a note prior to our meeting? I've gone through my
Julie
email.
did. She sent it yesterday from Julie. Okay. Should have come out. I mean, I sent it to her over the weekend. She sent it to you guys yesterday.
Okay.
I can't hear you, Joe. You're muted.
I have a copy of it.
Okay. So
Just what was the title? Maybe I got it.
The title was Update on Cypress Grove Golf Cart Crossing.
Thank you. Okay. I must have deleted it somehow. Okay.
Oh, it's rather extensive. I tend to be rather verbose with some of these things.
Okay.
I apologize, but
Do we have, is there anybody who objects? I don't think we really need a vote on this, but anybody who objects to Ron's proposal to change the engineering task authorization to substitute the Cypress Grove or the crossing at the intersection of Cypress Grove and Pelican Reserve Boulevard for the crossing at Azura?
That's kind of within the purview of the work group. That's why we have them. So we'll
Right.
support whatever the work group wants to do.
Anybody else? Any objections to that? Chris,
I think it's a good idea.
I think, yeah, we can go forward with that. It's the consensus of the group that that's okay.
Okay, we'll reissue that. I have the revised copy from Danny, so we'll reissue it to him and I'll copy you.
Okay.
thanks,
Thank you.
Chris.
And
One more point on this. One of the things I've asked Scott to do was to see if he could get somebody out there and inspect the existing flashing signs, which really don't flash. If you've noticed, about half of the LED lights around there aren't working, at least on the one closest to Pelican Reserve Boulevard. And I'm not really sure that thing has ever worked quite the way it was designed to work. But I've asked Scott to take a look at that and see what would be involved to get that working the way it's supposed to be working, both sides.
Hey, Ron, I can give you an update on that.
Okay.
One thing is PPAC or PPAC never did the work with those signs. The historical information I got was WCI funded those signs through the golf club. There's no marking or information on the manufacturer available. So I've enlisted my sign company to see if they can help with determining the problems and the manufacturer.
Okay. It's now that it belongs to us when they transfer the roads, so we're obligated to at least try to keep those things in a working order. So I appreciate that effort. The only other thing I've got, one of the things that I've asked one of our guys in the SSWG to do was to do a little research only on the back gate to the community. I've been here for 20 years. I personally understand all the history and the tax issues and all that kind of problem we've got in that. But I just wanted to update us, the SSWG, on the status of that piece of property back there where the construction gate is. I've been told by different sources that it transfers to us, thus the community. And I've also been told that it belongs to Lennar and it isn't going to be transferred to the community. So I'm just asking for guys, one of our guys to go ahead and get some background. First person, he may have already done this, is talk to Cal Brokey. She obviously has all the background associated with that back gate. And just to, again, create a database of information, whether we come back to you guys with a recommendation or not at some time in the future, don't know. That's what prompted me to ask Danielle to do a little bit of a safety / security look from their perspective as to the need. Everybody's aware of all the flooding we had along the main roads last year. And that was before most of Prado and Pistoria were there, or 3 years ago rather, with Irma. I'd hate to be those people when the roads are all flooded and have an emergency that they needed either an ambulance or fire or whatever. So having an emergency back gate, either for evacuation or for emergency services to get in here, I think is a prudent thing to at least look at. So we're starting that process just to create a database for us to take a look at. And that's it. Any comments or questions?
I congratulate you on that study, Ron.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I congratulate you on that study. It's due.
Okay, thanks.
Me too.
The one comment I would have relative to the Tetra Tech portion of this earlier, Glenn and I are watching their billings pretty closely now, and we want to make sure anything we ask them to do, you identify what it is they're doing for us. It doesn't restrict us in any way, but they're a pretty high ticket company. I want to make sure that that they're charging us appropriately, put it like that, because Ponds is just about done with them. We milked them pretty heavily over the last 10 years, but we're just about done.
Yeah, Chris has been sending me copies of those invoices, and I've looked at them from a SSWG perspective. And just so everybody knows, now this is Danny Nelson's rate. Obviously, that's not everybody's company's rate, but he charges like $240 an hour for his services.
Yeah,
okay?
He's the VP. He's the main guy.
Yeah, and that's I don't have any problem with that. Now he attended, virtually last month's PPAC meeting, and he charged us an hour's worth of his time to do that. And it was totally appropriate for him to do that. I have no problem. Yep. I didn't realize what the rate was, quite frankly. I was just letting everybody know. If they
Stephen Agapi is a lot cheaper.
Do anything, okay, it costs money.
Stephen Agapi is a lot cheaper, but he's kind of like a lawyer. If you call him, you're going to get a quarter of an hour billing.
Yes. And quite frankly, I did not appreciate that to the last month or so. So I'm just letting everybody know that.
Okay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, I mean, if we're using them, we've got to pay for it.
Ron, Glenn, have you gotten any reports from Fort Myers Police on, have we seen a decline in any of the infractions?
What we've been seeing is a decline in the number of police who are willing to come in here to patrol. Haven't really, okay. Quite frankly, I'm a little dismayed by that, but that is a problem. We're trying to see what we can do with police department to get them to get their police guys to volunteer to come in here. But no, I haven't gotten the last report in terms of infractions. I would assume, and be careful about what happens when you assume something. Because of lack of traffic in here in the last couple of months, I would imagine the number of violations have been down significantly. But I don't know that for a fact. But yes, we usually get them quarterly, so I should have something for you for the next meeting.
Yeah, and they only bill when they come in, right?
I apologize for the phone. Sorry. My wife is waiting for her doctor.
They only charge when they come in.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
All right, I'm done.
Any
Back
further
to you,
questions,
Bill.
Ron? If not, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is, oops. Chris, do we have the agenda? I think we're almost finished.
Gateway meeting schedule.
Oh, yeah, okay. Gateway meeting schedule. There's a gateway meeting this Thursday. Is that
I
correct?
got that one covered. That's me.
Got it covered? Joe's got it covered. Okay. When are the next meetings, Chris? Do we know? We lost it.
I think they're having a meeting on the 23rd for something, if I remember, that they mentioned at their last meeting.
That's not an official board meeting. I think that's just the assessment methodology.
Well, they continued the meeting of June the 4th to, I believe, this Thursday, June 11th,
Right.
to resolve the final assessment methodology vote. Right now, it is 3-2. Could go either way. And that's why they're going to, when it comes up, committee members request an audience comments, I'll talk about that.
It's 3-2, which way?
In favor.
In favor. Okay.
But one of the three is waffling.
One of the three is what?
Still open to waffling. They could go either way.
Okay.
If we're done with that part of it, then I'll go into general comments and talk about that.
I'm hoping.
Are they having a meeting on June 25th?
Yeah,
It's scheduled for the 18th.
Oh, 18th?
Yeah, we have it on the 4th. The next schedule is the 18th, but they're holding one the 11th, which is a continuation of the 4th. They didn't adjourn the 4th meeting.
Do we have somebody available for the 18th?
That's what Joe's got.
Yeah,
You're getting the 11th, Joe?
No, I'm getting the 18th.
You're getting 18th. Do we have somebody available for? Anybody available for the 11th?
I'm going to be attending that one.
Okay.
I'll cover the 11th.
Okay.
So it's a limited agenda item.
Right. It's just the assessment methodology.
And the budget.
Yeah, and the budget.
Chris, when do we have one on the 11th, one on the 18th? When are the next ones after that?
July 2nd will be the next meeting.
We have somebody who can cover July 2nd.
I can do that.
The 16th of July.
16th of July. Out there. I will cover the 16th of July. Okay. Bob on the 11th of June, Joe on the 18th of June, Teresa on the 2nd of July, and I'm on the 16th. Okay.
Got it.
Bob Gefford, can you still be on this committee if you win the seat for the Gateway?
Well, I don't know if I could or not, but I don't plan on doing it. I plan on resigning.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I suppose it's. But
I'm pretty sure you can't be, Bob.
yeah. I'd be surprised.
I was hoping you
But
could be
from a
on
timing
both.
point of view, I can't take on any more without getting something up.
Okay.
Mr. Gifford, a clarification, are you going to resign from PPAC or are you going to win the board seat and resign from the board?
The second. If I'm lucky enough to win, then I'll resign.
I was
Okay.
hoping you could keep both, and then none of us would have to go to the gateway meetings.
I like company.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll just have them report back to us every meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'll work.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Okay, we move on to audience comments and the remainder of the meeting. Bob, you said you had some things.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Mr. Tinkle made an interesting comment at the assessment methodology vote and discussion in that, there's like 10,000 homes, 10,000 residences, dwellings, ERUs, whatever you want to call it, and only about like 9 or 10 people have voiced any interest at all in the assessment methodology, both pro or con. So he's really talking about the general lack of any type of interest in this, the total apathy of the community. So it brought to mind that, while I in spirit agree with the assessment methodology needing to be updated, I have strong feelings that right now is not the time. And I base that on basically my gut for two things. First of all, in light of the COVID-19, the last thing any commercial entities need now is an increase. And you can't look at this assessment methodology with realizing there's going to be a significant increase on these folks. And this is like kicking them when they're down. The second thing has to do with the golf courses. The Gateway Golf Course is, I don't have the numbers in front of me. Let's just say they're going to end up paying $89,000 for 18 holes. And the 27-hole golf course for Pelican is going to be $340,000. Now, I know there's a lot of underlying reasons for all this and that, but I can't swallow that. That's just not equitable. They keep talking about fair and equitable. I'm not a golfer. I'm not a member. I don't have an oar in the water, but that needs to be reconciled more fully before I could possibly support changing the methodology. If the methodology is flawed, okay, I'm open to doing it, but I'm not ready to buy into this one. So what I was trying to do, I don't know if other members feel the same way or not, but I would like to get a sense of PPAC. So this week at the meeting, I can at least say what we think as a group. Now I'll shut up and let's hear from everybody else.
Well, one of the comments I would make is I think the reason you probably only got 9 people there is that the process is pretty complicated. And I think, people just have not spent the time to dig into it and understand it. And it's pretty complex. And you have to accept the fact that waterway control and road are the big factors in allocating or allocating assessments. Once you bought into that, then the methodology that has been proposed looks reasonably fair. I will be frank that I only looked at the residential piece of it, because that's what I was concerned about, because that's, where we have those are the people we need to answer to. And from a residential perspective, it hurts as we've discussed earlier, it hurts the single family homes. It helps the multifamily homes, but none of the numbers are too terribly big. So I didn't feel that it was worth going to the mat with them over that, what they were proposing, as in general, it seems like a reasonably fair process. So that was the door I came out.
Bob, does the golf course and the MGA, are they aware of how much the taxes may increase, which would affect the golfers, particularly with their dues, and the MGA?
Well, what this has surfaced, John, the short answer is no, I have no idea what they know or not. But the golfers have historically been paying 4 times as much to what Gateway did. And I guess I don't know that anybody has a real firm understanding of the equity of that. The golf course assessment per EAU is much, much higher than what they're doing over in Gateway. One or the other's got to be out of balance. So I don't know.
The increase, though, John, this year is not that great.
Correct.
What Bob is talking about is an historical situation where the Pelican Reserve Golf Course has always paid considerably more than the Gateway Golf Course.
And it comes down to these numbers, John, very quickly. But the number of EAUs for the Gateway Greens Golf Course is 223. The number of EAUs for Pelican is 384. Now, that's really in line with the fact that we're 50% bigger, 27 holes. The problem comes is that Gateway, or opportunity comes, Gateway pays $81.58 per EAU. And for some reason, Pelican pays $350 per EAU. So until that, I can understand and accept that fundamental principle, I can't support, you know, the assessment methodology. Now remember, the assessment methodology has got to come out to be revenue neutral. So I'm okay with that. I want to take the disadvantaged portion, and I think that the golf course is disadvantaged, and the commercial districts.
Yeah, well.
And we don't have any explanation as to why our EAU is valued so much higher?
Yes.
We can thank our friends at WCI and Lennar. And because it didn't impact us, Teresa, I don't think anybody's ever looked at it. I doubt very much if the golf course ever did.
Well, except that if you look at the residential EAUs, their EAUs are in the $600 range, ours are in the $1,000 range. And that is in part why we've built up the reserves we have, because our EAU charges have been substantially higher than theirs historically.
Yes.
And in part, that's how we built up the reserves. The other part of it is we spent more money on our ponds than they have.
Absolutely.
And so our
reserves, security, all of it.
Right. Our per EAU charges have historically been, I say historically, I don't know how far back it goes, but have been much higher than those at Gateway. And those are two of the big reasons are I think they went a little, you know, that we built up these reserves, but also that we spent money on the ponds where they weren't spending money.
Absolutely correct. And that's why I never ever compared our per home cost to their per home cost. We spent more knowingly. That was a conscious decision.
Exactly. Yep.
But I never looked at the golf course prior to this EAU, to the methodology study.
Mr.
It
Chair,
would seem to me the golf course people probably don't know anything about it. Since
I doubt if they do.
They don't care.
It's never been told to us that there's an issue at all. We just get the yearly bill, we pay it.
Right.
That's right.
If I can make a quick comment, I'll look into a little more and get you some detailed numbers if I can on that golf course assessment. And my opinion has been, well, I think it's a fair and equitable and a good report. That report was supposed to have been done in January, and it came out in late April and then was finalized in May 7th. And I don't think we've had the opportunity to get it in people's hands and vet it, meet with the HOAs and get a lot of feedback from folks besides just sending them emails. So we got started with getting that word out, but it's hard to get to those commercials and those people, even when you put a flyer in their bills, because the people that are impacted and write the checks aren't the ones that are getting the bill in the first place.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm saying we ought to scuttle the whole thing. I just don't think it's ready to approve this year.
So excuse me, I have to step out to another meeting at 4, so Vicky's going to close the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate your help. Okay, anything else for the good of the?
Well, Phil, I'd like to get a sense of the committee if they're comfortable with it, so that at the next meeting, you know, we PPAC speaks for our community. If we're okay with this, then I'm okay with it. But if other people feel that we might defer it for another year because of the timeliness or whatever, COVID.
I would
I'm okay
choose
with
that.
too.
I agree with you, Bob. I would use the excuse of the COVID-19.
I agree with you, Bob, as well.
Me too, Bob.
I think we're unanimous.
Yeah, Bob, I think it's a consensus of the committee.
Okay, then I'm going to communicate that to the board.
Yep.
That for this year, I'm going to phrase this properly. We can't support the implementation this year. We'd like to defer it till next year to give us more time to consider all of the ramifications.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
I heard that Gateway offered to buy Pelican's golf course from Lennar was turned down. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, the
Well, I
guy
don't
who
either, but
just
they
left,
probably didn't want to pay the $11 million that Lennar thinks the golf course is worth.
Well, you need to understand that the Gateway Golf Course is not owned by the members anymore. It's owned by a company.
Right, exactly.
And that company may have shown interest in the Pelican Golf Course. I can't comment on that. But it was not the Gateway Golf Course. It was the company that owns the Gateway Golf Course.
True.
If
True,
anything,
but Lennar, yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that Lennar did not accept the offer, whatever it was, from that company.
Tom Shaner from the Alliance had told the President's Council that that owner of that golf course in Gateway was interested in buying it, but he didn't want to interfere with the residents in Pelican buying it. So maybe something's changed and he has taken a leap to offer.
any other comments? Any other comments on anything? If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion adjourned and seconded. The meeting is adjourned as of 4:12. Thank you
when are we
all.
going to start getting back together in our meetings?
Well, we need to look at that. You know, I suppose there are ways of doing it now. They did it for the Gateway Services, for the GSCDD board meeting. They had an open meeting. We can take a look at that if people feel they want. What's the consensus? Would people prefer an actual physical meeting or a virtual meeting?
I prefer actual.
Yeah, I like the actual, but
Yeah, for those of us who are out of town for long periods of time, it's nice to be able to do this kind of a connection versus the telephone thing, which really
Absolutely.
never worked well.
absolutely.
I
no
agree with Ron on that, because I mean, I'll miss the next 3 meetings probably, or 2. Virtual meetings work. I mean, even if you had it at the Gateway place, at the boardroom, I mean, can we do a virtual meeting, go to meeting?
Yeah, it seems to me you could do a combination of a real and virtual meeting. I mean, I don't know why you couldn't do that. And those who are out of town.
Works very well.
I think it's a great idea to offer this for people that can't be there. And looking at the number of people attending the PPCA meetings this way, it looks like you get a lot more people attending than what you would have had coming to the meetings. So I think this is a great format to keep, even though we have live meetings in the future.
Yep.
Yep, it's a good tool.
Yeah, we had 117 the last PPCA meeting, so that was good. Okay, I'll take a look at that and see what we can do. I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate
Have a
it.
good
Have a
afternoon.
good day.
All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.